Hello and welcome to Mountain Climbers. I'm your host and fellow mountain climber, Whitney. Now, before I reveal to you who will be my guests today, I just do want to say that viewer discretion is advised. Topics such as shaken baby syndrome, criminal trials, being in jail, those will be discussed on this episode of Mountain Climbers. But I am very honored to have Miles and Ashley Ferguson as my guests today. I'm just truly inspired by them, and I'm just so thankful that they are willing to come on Mountain Climbers and share their story with you because it's not an easy one. It's a very painful one. They had to climb a mountain that most of the mountain climb was just inexplicably difficult, dark, and just unimaginable. But they stood on the promises of God, they trusted in Him, and they got through it. And they are the perfect example of showing that if you allow God, He will give you beauty after the pain. So if you need hope, if people are questioning your integrity, your character in just horrible, unimaginable ways, then this is the interview you need to watch because Miles and Ashley will show you how to stand firm in who you know who you are, but more importantly, who God knows who you are. Hey, Miles and Ashley, thanks so much for being on Mountain Climbers.
Hey, thank you for having us. We're
You're
excited to talk with you.
Yes, I'm so excited for you to be on here too. And I can't thank you enough for agreeing to come on here and share your story because the mountain you guys had to climb was inexplicably dark and painful, but I do appreciate you guys telling it because you believe it can give others hope. And so thank you for that. So you guys were high school sweethearts and you got married. And as most couples do after they get married, they want to start a family. And so you did. And you had a beautiful baby girl that you guys named Miley. And I would just love for you to share what Miley was like.
Well, Miley was beautiful. She had a head full of hair and she did all the things that newborn babies do.
Mm.
Eat well. She slept a lot and had lots of diapers
Yeah.
and was really just wonderful. I mean, we just loved, we snuggled her a lot and took
Hmm.
lots of pictures.
Hmm. Did your personality show through very quickly? You knew like what kind of baby, or did you see like, oh, I can't, I'm starting to see her personality and this is her temperament and that kind of thing?
Well, she was our first,
Yeah.
so we didn't have really anybody to compare her to, but
Yeah.
she was wonderful. I mean,
Yeah.
she slept great
Mhm.
and seemed easygoing, just
Yeah.
happy and
Yeah.
precious.
Yeah. Well, she was gorgeous. I remember seeing the pictures, and I mean, she could have been a model. She was absolutely beautiful. Now, you both come from very tight knit, close families that has a lot of traditions. And one of the traditions was going to Myrtle Beach with Miles' side of the family. So this would have been Miley's first trip with the Ferguson family. How old was she at that time?
She was tiny. She was 5.5 weeks.
Wow. Yeah, she was tiny. Wow. So before that vacation, had she shown any signs that were concerning to you?
Concerned, there was some things. So right after I delivered her in the hospital,
Uh-huh.
um, we noticed her making some strange movements.
Okay.
And me and Miles both noticed it when we
Yeah.
held her. And then my mom also said something about it. So the day after she was delivered, I was still in the hospital. Not
Mhm.
my OBGYN, but the one that was covering for
Yeah.
her came in, and we talked to him about our concerns.
Mhm.
And he said that her nervous system was immature. And
Yeah.
so she's going to make some strange movements that,
Okay.
you know, didn't look normal, and that she would kind of grow out of that.
Yeah.
But I had just finished nursing school and I was in OB rotations or OB clinic,
Yeah.
and we would go up there and hold a lot of the drug babies, and they would jerk, and but they
Oh,
was going through with
wow.
withdrawals.
Oh my.
And I remember telling my mom and Miles, she reminds me of a drug baby.
Oh
Like
my
she just keeps jerking, and it just every time she did that, every time um, either Miles or my mom or anybody that's seen her, it was concerning. I remember Miles's dad even being concerned and saying something about it. So we talked to our pediatrician,
yeah.
or her pediatrician at 2 weeks, and he said it could be two different things. He said it could be seizures, or it could be something called benign myoclonic jerking, which is really nothing to worry about. So he encouraged me to keep a log of it, try to
Okay.
video it, and we would do a follow up at her 2 month,
Okay.
and maybe follow up with the EEG if we felt like it was
Yeah.
serious. He really felt like it was the benign myoclonic jerking, and assured us we could go ahead and go on vacation. He didn't
Yeah.
really feel a concern to do anything at that moment.
Yeah. So you had a plan and you were told by doctors it's not really concerning to us, live life as normal, just we're not concerned. So it must have blindsided you when that tragic day happened. So walk me through that. What happened on the beach?
So we were actually, it was our first full day on vacation.
Okay.
We'd spent the night, it was a Sunday morning,
Hmm.
and it was a normal morning for us. We fed Miley,
Hmm.
and we had changed her that morning, and we had all kind of just everybody was going to basically take opportunity with her up in the room. We didn't want to get her onto the beach.
Yeah.
So I was going to be first with her,
Yeah.
and my family started going out on the beach, and it was kind of probably a later start than what we
Hmm.
usually do.
Okay.
So I can remember my dad being the last one out.
Okay.
I was actually in our bedroom at that time with her,
Hmm.
and we were laying on the bed, and
Hmm.
she wasn't asleep. So I remember him coming out saying, "I'll be back in
Okay.
around lunchtime." And he walked outside, and I actually just picked her up. I thought she'd awake, and I didn't want to lay there and end up falling asleep
Hmm.
myself. So we went into the living room, and I set her in her bouncy seat,
Hmm.
like a vibrating seat.
Yeah.
And I turned the TV on, started
Mhm.
flipping through channels.
Yeah.
And while I was flipping through channels, actually, I heard her make a noise, and just a raspy noise is all it was, but it caught my attention.
Yeah.
And I had looked down at her, and I just watched her. But when I was watching her, she looked like she was straining at
Oh.
that time, and she was a reddish color, and she kept getting darker.
Oh
And I
my.
realized something wasn't right. I was yelling for her, trying to get her attention,
Hmm.
and tried to do different things, trying to just get her to respond to me. She
Yeah.
wasn't responding.
Yeah.
And so I actually had her in my arms at this time. I ran out into the balcony with her and just started yelling for help.
Yeah.
At that time, a lady had come up first, who was really heaven sent to us,
Yeah.
who helped us a lot.
Yeah.
And then some other people had came in. The squad was called.
Hmm.
They rushed us to the hospital. Actually, I rode in the squad, and this process was just so crazy because they
Yeah.
was trying to get Ashley and all of my family's attention
Yeah.
because there's so many people on the beach.
Yeah.
And about the time we were pulling off is when they came running up. So that was how long that process was to
So
get them. And
that's
then they took us to the first hospital we went to.
that's crazy. And I'm sure so many things are going through your mind. especially your first time parent, you're young. So you're wondering, what's going on with my daughter? What decisions am I going to have to make? Is she even going to make it? Those things are what you were thinking about. Did it ever cross your mind, Miles, I'm going to get to the hospital and I'm going to face the nightmare of being accused of shaken baby syndrome?
No. When we were going to the hospital, my main concern in the squad was talking to them. Is she breathing? Is she breathing? And they were just communicating with me.
Mhm.
So the first hospital we got to that we arrived at was actually a local hospital.
Okay.
They were very good to us.
Mhm.
They assessed her. They actually had her breathing. They was able to get her breathing,
Okay.
and they actually even told us at that time that they were going to life flight her to a children's hospital for
Okay.
better care. But what they thought was within 3 days we would be back on our vacation. So
Wow.
before she went into the flight,
Uh-huh.
she started having some seizures,
Okay.
and I think they finally got those under control. And
Mhm.
then they put her on the life flight with Ashley.
Mhm.
And so when she was being life flighted, all this,
Mhm.
I guess our concern was wrapped up in is she's breathing, and then we were told we had some assurance at that
Yeah.
point that things were
Yeah.
looking okay.
Yeah.
They had done some initial blood work there,
Okay.
and felt from the results of that she
Okay.
was showing that she had a really severe infection. And so they was life flighting us to a place that had a NICU,
Okay.
better care for her.
I gotcha. So what point in that process were you arrested, Miles?
So this was Sunday is when all this happened.
Mhm.
It would have been like really, really in the middle of the night on Monday or Tuesday morning, basically. It was like
Oh my
1 o'clock in the morning or something close to that.
goodness.
So they had actually came to the hospital, and they were just, to be honest with you, even at this point, we've never been involved in anything like this before. So even at that point, we didn't even think a lot of it. We just thought they were questioning.
Yeah.
And so we spoke with them, and I was the last one to speak with them. And because I was the last one with Miley, they arrested me that night.
And did they tell you on what charges?
Yes. And I think at the time they called it like an assault charge at the time,
Oh, that's
because she
insane.
was still alive at that time.
Oh my
And
goodness.
apparently they, based off of what the doctors at this hospital were saying, they were able to do that. They were able to arrest me at that point.
Whoa. And this was the children's hospital.
Correct.
Which was the first time that we had even heard the accusations.
Yeah. Oh, it had to blindside you. I mean, you're trying to take care of your daughter, and here you have this whole other mountain climb that probably is even more devastating because you're being accused of something unthinkable. And that's not even who you are. And so you had to find out in the jail that Miley had passed away, correct? How did
Correct.
you hold it together? I can't even imagine.
Well, I didn't.
Sure.
They actually came and got me out of the cell. It was nighttime.
Mm-hmm.
They allowed Ashley to call me and talk to me, and I was able to. So I got to hear it from her,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm thankful for that. And
Yeah.
but no, I literally broke down, and it was a rough night. They took me back to the cell,
Mm-hmm.
and I cried a lot, but I prayed a lot.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably the first time in my life that I was put in a position
Mm-hmm.
where I felt like I had no control, that I didn't understand anything,
Yeah.
and that I could test God. And that wasn't what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But when I look back at it, that He was faithful through that time, and
Yeah.
through His Word that night. I didn't get any sleep that night.
Sure.
And the next morning, they'd actually taken me to get a TB test, and the chaplain came, and just to kind of show you how things work, and God works in crazy ways. I was really struggling. Even when I was reading his word, I
Yeah.
was wanting this comfort,
Hmm.
but I felt alone at that point.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And he had came and got me and took me into his office, and he spent close to, I would say, at least 2 hours with me
That's
in his
amazing.
office. And he read email after email after email to me of people that had sent character witnesses down. And
Wow.
he prayed with me. And honestly, that helped the aloneness that I had at that time.
I'm sure.
And so that's really, God just used things
Yeah.
to help me through
Yeah.
that period.
I could totally see that. To me, you're like a modern day Joseph, being accused of something that you would never even dream of doing. And so I'm curious, why weren't the charges ever dropped, especially with those character witnesses?
um, well, so that's kind of a loaded question, but
Answer it however you want.
so so the end result of this is because God allowed it. So it's in his hands.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to throw something out like somebody caused something, because
Yeah.
I believe God had every second or situation in his hands,
Hmm.
and he never lost control. So but I guess from a world standpoint,
Hmm.
you could look at it and say the hospital, they made a judgment call,
Hmm.
and they didn't want to go back on that judgment call.
See.
But we don't put our faith in that,
Yeah.
and we know that God was in control of the situation.
Yeah. So, if convicted of chicken baby syndrome, you probably face the rest of your life in prison, which is not an easy burden to carry by any means. And I do remember a long time ago, but I do remember that the lawyers you had were a godsend. So, how did you meet them?
Again, by God's direction and his provision in our lives, he directed us to them.
Mm-hmm.
Even though at the time we were like dumb sheep, just not unknowing and not really even knowing that he was directing us.
Yeah.
But my sister-in-law was actually looking for an attorney, and that woman that she had spoke with suggested and recommended this man. So it just kind of like one thing after another, and what we thought was kind of a disappointment because we was thinking we wanted this lady, ended up leading us to a person who was highly intelligent. His work ethic was next to none. He was so equipped for the job, and God used him in such a mighty way.
That's amazing. And not only did you have him, was it him and his daughter?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I thought so. I'm pulling out Brittworth's memory here.
Yeah, and he was also in with another attorney too that helped on the case. Yes.
All right. Well, that's amazing. You have them in your corner, but you also had so many people from your hometown in your corner who came to the trial, the week of the trial. They prayed for you. They encouraged you. They peacefully protested. What was it like to have those arm holders holding your arms in the midst of what I would imagine a very painful and daunting week?
Yeah, so just I can remember the first day that we went over there.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know, so I knew that there may be some people that came down.
Yeah.
And that the courthouse was like back-to-back U's, so you had to like walk around the building to get where you were going to enter at.
Yeah.
And when we walked around the building that first day, I can just remember, I was overwhelmed.
Yeah.
The people, and I was a nervous wreck going into that day.
Sure.
And I think looking back now, and even going through the process of it, how God used those people.
Mm-hmm.
It was, in miraculous ways, honestly, in our lives. But, we would going there in the mornings, we were so nervous to the point of just being sick every day.
Yeah.
And people hugging us and loving us and praying for us. And then, we're leaving, and it's dark out when we're leaving a lot of times. And, there was days when it was raining, and they stayed there. and how just the effect that had on us every day. It's like they gave us energy to go in, and then when we left, they were loving us going out, and there was nothing like that. It was an army that God built up for us through that time.
That is amazing. And I mean, he knew you needed it because throughout that week, Miles, your character, your integrity, what you stand for was being questioned. And I can't imagine having to listen to that. And Ashley, you had to sit there and listen to people that you don't even know think the worst of your husband. So how did you keep it together? Because I would think you would want to lash out and say, hold on a minute. How did you do it?
Yeah. I mean, my heart pounded so much through that. And I know his did as well.
Mm-hmm.
When this all first took place, Miley passed away on August 2nd, and we waited 27 months for this to go to trial. And so that was a 27-month boot camp, really, for our hearts, for our minds, for our faith. And in that 27 months, God had taught us, I mean, just such an enormous amount of lessons, but one that just really, I felt that he had impressed when I had read scripture and stuff through that time was Romans 12:18 that says, never avenge yourselves, but leave it to the wrath of God. For it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. But just knowing that we didn't have to avenge ourselves, we didn't have to lash out. And really what was so unique about this situation, we had to be quiet. In the courtroom, we had to be. So we had to sit there and listen to horrible things that were said. And then Proverbs 12:18 says, reckless words pierce like a sword. And we were being stabbed to death, Whitney. It was horrendous. But the Lord was so good and gracious, and he allowed it. And we knew he was fighting for us. And I just do want to back up just for a minute, because the night before the trial started, Miles said something that is so profound, and he's got to share that.
Yeah, that's really what helped me.
Yeah.
It was a Sunday. It was actually an afternoon. We were some friends of ours had loaned us a condo to stay in while we were down there. And I was actually, Ashley had went out. I think she might have went with her parents or something. I'm not sure. But I was alone in the condo. And we had to go down like midweek, the week before the trial, to go through things. And I had always had someone beside me up to that point. And I mean, I felt like the enemy was like working overtime on me at that point. And I just felt fear coming over me. And I knelt down in their living room floor on the couch and just started praying, asking God for help. And that I was scared, and that I didn't know what I was going into. And that I needed his peace. I needed his comfort to know that he's there. And when I had gotten up, I opened my eyes up, and I actually turned around and sat down on the seat. And Ashley, like just weeks before we left, she got me this little devotional book. And that's what was sitting in front of me. And so I just picked it up, and I literally picked it up and opened it. And when I opened it, it was a devotional. And the passage that was on was Exodus 14. It was verse 13 and 14 of Exodus. But this is where the Israelites are at the Red Sea, and they were afraid. And Moses had spoke to them and told them to fear not, and to stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he would show to them today. And then it goes on to say that the Lord shall fight for them, and they shall hold their peace. And that just, the boost that gave me, and it just helped me to know, I knew going in, I couldn't speak out. I would sit there, and you were going to listen and take it, go through that process. But that just helped me to know that God is ahead of this. He's fighting for me, and I don't even need to say anything. So.
Well, I mean, God is so proactive. He knows exactly what we need before we, even know ourselves that we need it. And I'm sure, metaphorically speaking, from the beginning of the trial to the end of the trial, you were probably a beaten, battered, bloodied mess. And, I'm sure that day when you knew you were getting the verdict, you went there with dread, fear, maybe a little bit of hope. So I have to know, what did you do when you heard the verdict? We find the defendant, Miles Ferguson, not guilty.
Well, I was, pictures probably do that more justice than my mind
Mm-hmm.
because my mind was numb. I know that when it happened,
Mm-hmm.
um, I had some of the jurors, we weren't supposed to say anything
Mm-hmm.
regardless.
Yeah.
So, that they told us not to say anything, but
Mm-hmm.
all I could think about was, truthfully, even what the jurors had to sit through that process,
Mm-hmm.
because they had to listen to everything we did. And I know that it wasn't them in our seat,
Yeah.
uh, but I just felt like they endured a lot too. And so I know I thanked them.
Yeah.
I mouthed it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that we hugged people, and
Yeah.
it was, looking back, it was just, there was a weight that was lifted,
Mm-hmm.
and that was instantaneous when I heard that. But
Oh,
I can't remember a whole lot of what we were doing at that time.
Yeah, well, all the people that came down there, I mean, there was like people was singing songs. There was even deputies that had listened to the whole court, that was smiling and hugging us, and it was just beautiful. And yeah, lots of tears, lots of hugging,
yeah.
lots of singing.
Yeah. That's just such a beautiful picture because, those deputies and, even probably the jury and especially the judge, they couldn't show you throughout that week what they thought. And so once the verdict was given, you knew, like, oh, they were in my corner too. And that has to be such a wonderful feeling. I do have to tell you, I don't know if I've ever told you this story, but the day of your trial, and I'm pretty sure that you didn't know till that evening what the verdict was, but I was actually studying for a philosophy exam when Calray called through the verdict, and I was studying with a friend, and I'm like, hold on, I think this is the verdict for my friends. Like, I got to listen to the prayer chain. So I, answered it, and Cal's like, they found Miles not guilty. And I just started bawling. And she's like, what's wrong? So anyway, I remember that night so vividly. I was so excited for you guys. And, Miles, you mentioned that pretty much instantaneously when they said not guilty, that burden lifted. And eventually it was replaced with a vision to honor the legacy of your daughter, Miley. And you guys launched Miley's mission. What inspired you to do that?
Well, truthfully, it's probably a little bit of a different twist than that, but it's we. So my life through that, Miley, her life changed me in a way, and God helped me to see something in a way that I was missing in my own life.
Yeah.
And it was really, I think her life put things in perspective for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because I realized how fragile it was,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized that our focus needs to be on the important things of life.
Yeah.
And so it was really that inspired me. I think I feel like God was really directing me into the starting of a ministry.
Yeah.
Not knowing it was going to be Miley's Missions.
Okay.
That name really kind of came about through the board. And when we were talking about a name, what can we name this? I think some people had thrown that out. But really, for me, the ministry and really the connection with Miley is just that situation helped me to understand that we need to reach this world and do everything that Christ asked us to do. And obviously seeking souls, clothing, feeding, anything we can do. We need to try to do those things. And so, that was a lesson that I learned through her life during this process. And that's really where it came from.
Okay. Well, it's impacted so many people in our community. So I would love for you to give some statistics. How many people have been touched and how many people have been saved through the ministry?
Well, I'm going to give a broad answer to this on when you mentioned touch. So I think that my hope and my prayer is everybody that comes through that is touched. And, that we're able to hopefully plant seeds in them that will go way beyond the Christmas event and things that we do.
Yeah.
But I think we're somewhere between 7,000 and 8,000 people since the beginning that's came through. So a lot of people have come through.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to salvation, souls being saved, it's so a long time ago, I learned that I used to be really caught up in like salvations, like numbers and counts. And but I learned just many years ago, actually, during this process of Miley's mission, that I struggled with that a little bit because I felt like, to just number them, it's putting a number on them, but really that's got to be a God thing. It can't be us.
Yeah.
And so at the beginning, we used to do that. We used to pray and just kind of convictions in my own heart through the process of this that kind of changed. So I guess to answer that question, I pray that there's been many saved through this process. And I do know that we've had people that's came to us, that's told us that's in church today because of the events. And so I don't have a count on those things, I guess is my point. But I know that we've seen a lot of good come out of a lot of changes.
Yeah, of course. And I kind of like that, knowing that you have this thing to look forward to when you get to heaven.
Yes.
And you'll learn in heaven what Miley's missions did for so many people. But looking back on your mountain climb that happened so many years ago, it was dark, it was painful, and you've had several years to process everything. So my question would be, what specific lessons have you learned from that time? And can there be beauty from ashes, from something like your daughter dying and being almost convicted of shaken baby syndrome? I mean, can there be?
Answer that one first.
I would say the biggest lesson through all of that is just, for me, he can be trusted. Like our God can be trusted. If he is your Lord and your Savior, you're an author, Whitney. And so you write stories, but the Lord is the author of salvation.
Exactly.
And he's not only the author of our salvation, but he's the author of every detail of our life. And so it's his story for our lives that's being written, and that on every page, every chapter, he can be trusted, that he's good, he's faithful, his promises are true. And it was happy when we came back, when we got the not guilty verdict. Thank you. But Miley wasn't there, and there was still heartache, and there was still trials. And while some people may think it was a happy ever after ending, there was still much heartache still there that we dealt with. And since that time, there's been new chapters with new trials and new levels where God has asked us to trust him that have been hard. But we've learned to trust him, and that it is not in our own strength that we can climb these mountains, but it is by the Almighty God who sustains us, who gives us the strength, who gives us the grace for every moment of every step, for every hill. He serving him, climbing with him. You said beauty from ashes, all the heartache, all the pain, it is not comparable to the joy that serving him is, to being his servant, to being to living out our life in a way that that aims to bring glory and honor to him. It's just not comparable to the hard times in life.
I agree. Do you have anything to add, Miles?
I would just say, the Bible, it's the importance of reading scripture and being in the Bible. So many people go through so much in the Word of God, and we can learn, just like you brought up Joseph earlier.
Mhm.
But there's so many stories of God's faithfulness.
Yeah.
And so I think that being grounded in his word,
Hmm.
it will help you no matter what comes your way.
Yeah.
But I also think 2 points I would make would be, one of them is, the Bible and God himself tells us to fear him and him
Hmm.
alone. And, if our fear is truly just in the God, and when you think about it, I mean, he is who holds our eternity.
Hmm.
If there's anybody to fear,
Yeah.
it's him.
Yeah.
So if we can stand before God
Hmm.
fearless because
Hmm.
of Jesus Christ,
Yeah.
then we can really stand before anything that we're faced with.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would put is that, our value doesn't come from what people say,
Hmm.
your circumstances.
Hmm.
God and God alone gives you your value.
Hmm.
And no matter what the world thinks of us, no matter what the world sees of us,
Yeah.
the fact of the matter is it's God and him alone.
Mhm.
And so we can have confidence in that. And as Christians, we should stand firm in that and know that, we are valued by the God of this universe.
Mhm.
He not only created me, but he loves me. He's
Yeah.
guiding me, and nothing will come to me
Yeah.
without him.
Yeah.
So I would just say that I've learned that lesson
Mhm.
through this process, and
Yeah.
he's been good and faithful to us for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Well, what you just said is the perfect segue into my last question. So, during that time, Miles, I mean, your character, your integrity, just basically who you are was put in to question. And Ashley, you had to listen to people you didn't even know, think the worst of your husband. So how in the midst of that would you tell people, because I'm sure there's people who they might not be going through your exact mountain climb, but their integrity is being questioned as well, and that's a hard thing to face. So how would you tell them to stand firm in who they know they are, but more importantly in who God knows they are?
Yeah, I would say, I would just kind of echo again what Miles already said.
Mm-hmm.
Live your life for the audience of one,
Mm-hmm.
the only one. And if he is, again, if you can stand before him,
Mm-hmm.
then really that's success. That's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And to bring him honor and glory in your life, in your trials, in your suffering, that in that, not just in the good times, but in the bad times,
Mm-hmm.
that your light of Christ shines bright. That is a beacon of light in the darkest of trials. That's the hope of what we hoped to do. And I think too, this is something that I think of too. Psalm 119:50 says, "Your promises revive me and give me life." And so standing on God's promises, knowing what those promises are, again, hit through that 27 month and plus beyond that, even when we was still grieving,
Mm-hmm.
it was his promises, his word that revived our souls and gave us life. And knowing what those promises are. So it's that he is our ever-present help in trouble,
Mm-hmm.
that his grace is sufficient, that he'll never leave us. That
Mm-hmm.
is so huge right there, because again, you mentioned the story of Joseph.
Mm-hmm.
He was falsely imprisoned.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't get a not guilty verdict.
Yeah.
He was falsely imprisoned, and we knew the same could be true. God didn't owe us that. And his purposes, that was his plan and purpose for Joseph. That could be his plan for us as well. Yeah. But knowing that he would never leave us and that he would be our ever-present help. That's what helped me so much going into that, knowing if we had already buried our daughter, it felt, like our family, it was being ripped apart. We was all being separated. Miles could possibly face life in prison. We may never get to share this life together. Mm-hmm. But knowing that his promises are true, that God would be with him just the same as he would be with me, is what encouraged my soul. And then the last is his promise that the good work that he started in us he would bring it to completion. Mm-hmm. And that is our conformity to Jesus, mm-hmm. making us, shaping us, chipping away the the places in our life that don't reflect him well, that don't bring him honor and glory.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to be chipped at,
Mm-hmm.
and it hurts. But the end process is Christ likeness, and that is the goal of every Christian, to be like their Savior.
Yeah, that's so true. I love what you guys said. It's beautiful, and it's just easy to understand and very, very straightforward. And you guys inspire me so much. I appreciate, your story and what you took from it to, become more, I like the word more. And, to me, you show people that, if you allow God, he will bring beauty from your pain. And you show people that you can have hope in the midst of darkness, and you can climb even when the mountain is steep, and you can trust in God in what seems impossible circumstances are before you. But I think my favorite thing about you guys is you show this just profound truth. When your strength comes from the right source, there's not a mountain you can't climb.